When people ask her about her memories, she will say, "Well, did you have a happy childhood?" And they say, "Yeah." And she said, "That's probably why you don't remember."
You're listening to Good Faith Weekly. I'm Mitch Randall.
And I'm Missy Randall.
We're here each week exploring the intersection of faith and culture
We find people who stand up, speak out, and step forward.
for inclusion, freedom, and justice for all.
It's time for Good Faith Weekly.
Brought to you by Good Faith Media. Welcome to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, Missy and I are going to catch up as she tells you a little bit about a squirrel who came into our life this week. And then later on the pod, we sat down with Rhonda Lauritzen, who's an author and has got a new book out titled A Child in Berlin. It is a fascinating story and a great interview. So stay tuned. Hello there, Missy.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well, and you?
Well, I have survived a really strong course of steroids over the last week, and I guess I should really say that you survived.
I did.
Because
it was touch and go, but I did survive.
Yes, the kind that make you really irritable and hangry and just feeling gross. And
I did not realize that at all.
I'm sure. But we have made it here. I am off, feeling better, so here we are. But I've got to call you out about something.
Oh no, what did I do?
Okay, so apparently we have become the age of people who every weekend, if we're home, we're like buying more flowers.
Yeah, it's really strange.
I never thought this would be who we are,
Yeah,
but here we are.
Here we are.
We're bored.
Gives me joy.
We're bored. We go to the nursery. We're like, oh, that's pretty. We'll plant that.
Took my birds away, so now I have to take flowers.
That's right. Well, anyway, so we did that I don't know, every weekend we've been home this spring so far. So we have some beautifully planted flowers from just this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And you have been getting so irritated with the squirrels
Oh,
that are digging in the flower bed.
those little bastards.
Okay. So today we're sitting in my office, ear across my desk. We are thoughtfully parsing out our questions
Yes.
for our interview today. We're like, really concentrating and trying to polish this off. And all of a sudden you look out and you see a squirrel approaching the little flower bed
I'm
around
like the dog in the backyard.
around our tree. And you did. You like cut me off. You said, hang on. And I saw it and I thought, okay, you're just going to go open the door and then he'll startle and run away.
Yes.
No.
Oh no.
You opened the door and then ran after him. And of course, as soon as you started out the door, he took off to the neighbor's yard and you didn't stop there.
Oh no.
You like the tough guy that's got to walk the guy all the way out to the parking lot in the bar. You're like, you're going to show him.
I treed that sucker.
The best part is I have downloaded the Ring camera video of the whole thing.
Oh no.
It was so funny.
So in my defense, those little squirrels are causing havoc in my garden that we spend so much time cultivating. First of all, last year we planted bulbs
Right.
for them to blossom this spring. Well, they dug those things up every chance that they could get, looking for nuts that they had buried. And then lately, they're just digging. They're digging everywhere, and I see these little holes, and they're just driving me crazy. So yes. I may have overreacted.
They are
today.
digging at you.
They are.
Is what they're
digging at me.
doing. And I'm going to enjoy the way this spring plays out as you continue to try to chase them off, which is going to be an exercise in futility,
Yeah.
but I'm here for it.
Yeah, but I am a dog in the backyard at this point.
You really are. You really are.
Oh,
Aside from the squirrel drama,
yes.
this week has really brought some drama and some tension to truly the whole world.
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time processing it all.
Yeah, it's been a difficult week. I mean, the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran is on its third week. Over the weekend, which was Easter weekend, by the way, the president posted on Truth Social this horrendous post about bombing Iran and even used the phrase praise Allah. I mean, it was just really grotesque and really offensive. And, I wrote a little piece about it this week at goodfaithmedia.org, standing beside all of our Muslim brothers and sisters in this moment. But then it didn't stop there. I mean, Trump went on to talk about he believes that God is on the side of U.S. Israel in this war. And it's elevated to an incredible extent. The Pope has even commented on this, saying that people who advocate for war or warmongering, God doesn't hear their prayers. There's this give and take between the White House and the Vatican. It really has escalated quickly. And all the time, we continue to see bombs raining down in Iran. Thankfully, there has been a ceasefire, but even that came at the behest of Trump talking about annihilating an entire culture. And
That was just, yeah,
it,
as if Easter morning wasn't bad enough to
right.
wake up to the president dropping F-bombs and literal bombs,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, and then what is it, the next day?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to annihilate this
Civilization.
civilization.
Yeah. And it's just mind-boggling. You think, can things get any crazier? And then here we are, just even crazier. But here's what I really want to talk about today. And it is this use of religious language from Christian conservatives in this administration. The worst is Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. He is a Christian nationalist through and through. He continues to use this rhetoric that equates the war in Iran and really any kind of military action as being the tip of the spear for God himself, and using his kind of language. And it's terrifying. And what should not be surprising to me, this is the rhetoric that the religious right has used for decades.
Mm-hmm.
They have militarized religious language. They have tried to equate fighting on the side of God. A lot of people believe that was metaphor or just hearsay, or not hearsay, but just hyperbole. But I always contended they believe this stuff.
Right.
And here we are today with bombs raining down on countries, invading other countries, kidnapping other leaders. And not to say any of these people are pious and great people, but at the same time, we are walking a very fine line. And I think acting in a very heretical way, using this type of religious language to justify war. And it is appalling to me. And it also is terrifying to me because I don't think they are finished. I think they will continue to ratchet it up.
That's my fear, is like what's coming next.
Yeah. Also, what we learned this week in the reporting from the New York Times is that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, was actually in the Situation Room prior to the war, convincing the President of the United States to go to war. And all along, Netanyahu seems to have this strategy of wiping the Middle East of Palestinians, and then also gaining more and more ground for the state of Israel. We've seen it in Gaza, we've seen it in the West Bank, and now we're seeing it in Lebanon, as southern Lebanon is just being destroyed by the state of Israel. And here we have the United States not only funding it, but now putting religious cover on what's going on over there. It is really frightening. And for me personally, as someone who considers himself a Jesus follower, it is antithetical to the teachings of Jesus. It goes directly against what Jesus taught while he was here on earth.
I agree. And I was talking to a friend on Sunday about this very thing after the first Easter tweet from the president, and just how frustrated that we are about the religious language that's surrounding these horrific acts. And how do we reconcile that, as a person of faith, or do we? And
Right.
I just, this is such a niche analogy. But I told my friend, I said, I feel like, I've played for a team, let's say a football team, for years. And I've believed in that mission. I've believed in the camaraderie. I've believed in my people. I've believed in the character, the ethic, and all of this team. And then all of a sudden the team gets sold.
Mm-hmm.
Then the owner does not represent the things that the team did. And for a while, the team can continue on. But eventually, it's going to corrupt the entire team.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I'm there. And it's like, at what point do you walk away from the team? And I mean, I'm just being honest about that.
Yeah.
At what point do you say, you know what? I just can't do this anymore. This is no longer my team.
Yeah.
And I can't be associated. And I think that's it's so difficult. And there are people with real problems right now. There are bombs being dropped on people. And so my crisis of faith is of zero importance.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying that all to say, it's so frustrating because this is happening in the name of something that is not intended to be hurtful to anyone.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And to me, that is what is so appalling about the use of religious language to justify what is going on in Iran and in Lebanon and in Gaza and the West Bank. That this, as I said a moment ago, goes directly against anything that Jesus taught. And to do it in Jesus' name or to do it under the banner of Christianity is absolutely lunacy. And the Pope has called them out on it, which I greatly appreciate. Other Christian leaders, including Good Faith Media, has done it. A lot of our partners have done it. And we continue to have to voice this. And here's the thing. I pray to God that some of the people who have supported this president and this administration start to listen, because I don't know if we've passed the point of no return. If we haven't passed it already, we're getting pretty darn close.
So I think this layers in really well with our conversation today with Rhonda Lauritzen. She's got a book out called A Child in Berlin. And it's about a young girl who grew up during World War II in Berlin, about her and her mother's story. And it's a wonderful story. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. But one of the things that stood out to me is just in kind of going through their daily lives is how much things become normalized,
Mhm.
how much you adapt, how much you grow numb to what's going on around you.
Yeah. And that's, kind of like what you said a moment ago, as far as, the team being bought. And in this story, you have life going on in Germany.
Mhm.
And, there's a lot of German pride, especially after World War One, and people were, starting to be proud of their country again. And then all of a sudden, you get this figure in Hitler, and the Nazi Party began to play into that patriotism. But then all of a sudden, it seems like overnight, your team was yanked out from under you. And instead of Germany, you had Nazis.
Yeah.
And it was just, this story is absolutely remarkable. We talk to a lot of authors who have, really amazing books, that there's nothing better than just a good old story. And this is one of them.
It's fascinating. Yeah, you all know I'm a sucker for any sort of memoir or biographical type of book. This book is the example of why. Is because truth is sometimes much more fascinating than fiction, and this is an example of that. I think everybody needs to read this book. I think it's an important read, not only for what Heidi and her mother went through, but also in just looking at where our blind spots are today.
Yeah, 100%. So Missy and I will be right back with Rhonda Lauritzen and her book, A Child in Berlin. I'm Mitch Randall, CEO of Good Faith Media. GFM stands at the intersection of faith and culture. We use multiple media platforms to promote the common good, advocate for equal rights and protections, keep church and state separate, encourage social responsibility and solidarity, and widen the circle of cooperation across faith traditions. We hope you'll join the conversation with us. Visit goodfaithmedia.org. Welcome back to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, we've got a very special guest with us. Rhonda Lauritzen is a professional biographer and speaker at international conferences. She has an MBA from the University of Utah, served as CEO of her family business, and a state college VP at one time. Her writing journey began with her parents' family business, and in 2016, she founded Evalogue.Life. Rhonda recently authored A Child in Berlin, the poignant story of Heidi Posnien and her mother during the fall of Germany. A Child in Berlin is the true story of a mother, a daughter, and their courage in the face of Nazi terror. Rhonda, welcome to Good Faith Weekly.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted.
So, Rhonda, before we get started, I just want to give a little disclaimer here that if at any point in our conversation we mention something that's too much of a spoiler alert, feel free to stop us. But I just want to say we have so many things we want to talk about.
So many things, absolutely.
We just both loved this book and Heidi's story. So before we get into questions, tell us how you found out about Heidi and got connected with her and what made you decide to write this book.
Yeah. So I do people's true stories. I do, family histories and local history. And I'd done a story for a friend of Heidi's, and her name is Norma Keir. And Norma called me one day and said, I have a friend. And she grew up in Germany during the war. She's got a story, and I think you should talk to her. So this was 2019. And at the time, I was pretty busy. Like I kind of had
Mm.
a full slate. But when Norma calls, I'll do anything for Norma. So I met with Heidi and, to be honest, really intimidated. Like
Yeah.
I felt totally unqualified to do a World War II Germany story. That is not my wheelhouse.
Mhm.
So I thought, we'll just do your oral history. I'll get your interviews, and whatever you tell me, I'll just write up. We'll do a little thing for your family. We'll keep it small, right? I
Right.
can do that. And then she started telling me her story.
Right.
And I just thought, oh, wow, we need to do this justice. And it took us 5 years.
I'm so glad you did and stuck with it. This story is phenomenal
Yeah.
and does need to be told.
Yeah. And you did such a great job telling it. And so, to our listeners, I mean, set the scene for us before we kind of get into the meat of the story, because this story begins as this mother and daughter living in the country and then has this transition. So, before we talk about the latter part of it, set the scene for us.
Okay. So Heidi is 3 years old and she's living in this Polish village. And we had to kind of unpack because she always described her family as Polish,
Mhm.
but then they were back and forth in Germany. Well, it was just inside the German border, but they were ethnically Polish.
Right.
And it's 1939. So we know what happens in September of 1939.
Right.
Heidi ends up going to live with her mother, who's an opera singer, in Berlin, and they spend the rest of her childhood between Berlin and sometimes back and forth to the countryside. But that area was right where Hitler's troops plowed through when they invaded Poland.
So, to me, one of the most fascinating parts of this book is Heidi's memory. Like
Yeah.
you said, you pick up this story when she's 3, and
Yes.
she's able to recall so many details and tell us what, in her story, apart from the war, just her story with her mother and how her mother navigated being a single mom is fascinating enough. So I don't know, how was she able to recall that, especially in the early years? Like, I mean, did you have to prod her, or did she just have all this rote and just started, spitting it out?
First of all, her memory truly was extraordinary. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
she would say details of things like, "Well, my friends and I, we would walk, and it'd be about 6 kilometers." And I'd be like, "There's no way you guys at the age of 7 were walking 6 kilometers through the city." And then we
Right.
would map it, and I'm like, "Sure enough, 6.3."
Mhm.
Yeah.
She just truly had extraordinary recall. And I wonder if possibly she suffers from dyslexia and her brain she's
Mm,
really extraordinary in some ways. And I've worked with other people who have dyslexia and they have extraordinary brains in other ways. And I've wondered a little about that.
Wow.
But she also said, when people ask her about her memory, she will say, "Well, did you have a happy childhood?" And they say, "Yeah." And she said, "It's probably why you don't remember."
Mm.
wow.
If you go through something really traumatic, you remember everything
Hmm.
about those details. She's like, "I can remember everything about the final weeks of the war like it was a whole year and it was a week." So
Wow.
she said later there were things that were more mundane and I didn't remember those details.
Right.
So I don't know, that gave me chills to think about. When you were talking to her, what was that like for her to share? Was she eager to share? Was that difficult for her? I just, like you said, she suffered intense trauma, and that's got to
Yes.
be, I can't imagine that's easy to do. So, what was that like for her?
It was not easy. And that's one reason it took her to be well into her 80s before she was really ready to talk about it. She had told people bits and pieces of her story, and they'd been telling her for years, "You need to write that down. You need to write a book." And she didn't like to look back. She's a very happy, positive person. So she didn't dwell, and bringing that back was hard. And we had, as she would say, many crying days when she was telling parts of her story. When, she would start to she would tell me, and then I would get emotional, and then she would cry, and we were just a mess. So it was hard. And then doing interviews was hard because she didn't always want to just go back and tell all the traumatic details.
Right.
What I really appreciated the way you told the story and the way Heidi conveyed it to you, and then you translated it for the rest of us, is that when there was details to be told, you told those, but you were also very honest. Because I'm a footnote guy, and I really appreciate a good footnote. And this book is filled with them. And you say, well, we may not know exactly, what was transpiring here, but this is the facts. And so, that recall that Heidi had, but also the honesty, I think, really legitimizes the story because it is an honest portrayal of this little girl's life, and accompany it with her mother. So war breaks out, Rhonda, and Kata and Heidi find themselves, in Berlin. Kata's making her career there in Berlin, and she's dating this officer that has connections to the Nazi brass. So I don't want to give too much away, but I think I've seen you mention this in other interviews and in promotional materials. There's a dinner that takes place. So tell us a little bit about that dinner, and then also kind of what was going on in Kata's mind as she was experiencing all of this that was unfolding in Nazi Germany.
Yeah. So, first of all, about Heidi telling me this story,
Hmm.
she didn't give any spoilers. She told me one interview at a time, kind of in order.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
we've been interviewing, I don't know, for months. And all of a sudden, she tells me this story. And I'm like, wait, what?
Oh my
So,
gosh.
now I'll tell you and it's okay. We've put this in some of our materials.
Sure.
It's not too much of a spoiler, but Keita was dating a Wehrmacht officer, and this officer was on the personal staff of Magda Goebbels. This is Magda Goebbels, like the first lady of the
Hmm.
Reich, however you say it. I don't speak German, but she's first lady. She is not officially, but she was on Adolf Hitler's right arm
Hmm.
constantly. Her husband is the propaganda minister, the man responsible for spewing the hatred and the lies and all of the things. So this was he was in her home, on her staff. And because of his position and because she was an opera singer, the Nazi party loved their opera.
Hmm.
And so she was arm candy. And he, as Heidi would say, and he invited her to a dinner presided by Adolf Hitler himself. So, right. I mean, at the time, they were not aware. This was
Sure.
earlier in the war. They really didn't know what was happening. And she's this beautiful woman. She's caught up kind of in society. She's getting to go to fancy dinners. I mean, who wouldn't be a little caught up in all of that
Right.
kind of splendor? This girl that couldn't wait to get out of the village, in
Right.
Hmm.
Poland. And then shortly after that, she started to understand what was happening. Her
Yeah.
best friend was also Polish. She was dating a Jewish man, and they started to see their friends. They started to see people getting hauled away, people in their building, the Romanis that lived downstairs. Heidi and her family saw so many horrible things happen to people that they know, and she had to make a choice.
When Heidi was retelling the story to you, was there a moment for her that really began to sink in of what was going on in Germany? And I have to keep reminding myself that she's a little girl, but she tells it with such authority and with such efficiency that there does seem to be, she has some awareness of what's going on because of the way she tells the story.
Yes. And so, a couple of things. Heidi's mother was one who kept her cool,
Right.
and Heidi took her cues from Keita's just presence of mind always.
Hmm.
So, when Keita didn't freak out, Heidi didn't freak out. So, they went through the bombings, and Heidi felt pretty secure. But Keita started to get involved in black market trading. She left the opera. They broke up with her boyfriend. She finds herself kind of making a living trading in black market goods.
Right.
And a couple of times Heidi saw, because her mother got hauled away by the Gestapo once. And Keita always felt like the only way to protect Heidi was to educate Heidi. So she would grill her and she would say, if someone asks you a question, you say, you know nothing. What's your name? I don't know. Where do you live? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So if your mother's giving you that kind of instruction, things are not okay. If
Right.
your mother gets hauled away. But there was another moment that Heidi, and the bombings, of course, too. I
Sure,
mean,
sure, sure.
there were bombings, but there was a moment when a woman in their building had a little boy. And based on the description, I can imagine maybe he was like a Down syndrome. He had
Mhm.
Down syndrome or something like that. Loving little child. And the mother took him into the doctor and they kept him overnight. And the mother came home almost hysterical, saying these children were there with like glassy eyed. They're doing something to these children and they won't let me take my boy home. They won't. And Heidi overheard it. And she's, like 6 or 7, and the boy died.
Mm.
And Heidi was terrified of going to the doctor after that.
Yeah.
But just hearing the conversations, Heidi was always listening to the grown-ups.
So I think in speaking of, Keita deciding to leave the opera, it's kind of very much of an ethical decision that she makes, and without going into all the details. But it was, to me, fairly early on, and their life was still able to be, kind of go on as normal at that point. And to me, she made a really difficult and bold stand in what she did in walking away. Do you have any idea of what prompted her to make that decision? Because I think at that point, a lot of people didn't really know correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't exactly know what was going on.
Yes. 2 points about that. One is that the rumor mill in Berlin was always rampant. They called it mouth radio. People were always there were rumors all the time. One of the questions is how much did they know and when did they know it?
Mhm.
Because people would always say, "Oh, we after the war, we didn't know, we didn't know."
Right.
And others would say, "What rubbish. Of course we had to know." Because at the very least, they knew they didn't want to know.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It wasn't good, right? If you know
Right.
people are being hauled away and never heard from again, it's not good.
Right.
And Keita was aware, she was savvy. Something else that's interesting about Berlin is that it was the least Nazified part of
Yeah,
Germany.
I mentioned that in the book, and I was kind of surprised when I heard
I
that.
was
Right,
too.
because it was the capital city, right? We
Right.
think of it being the Reichstag and where Hitler's parade happened, but I think it was something like, don't quote me on the number, but we'll say 30% voted for Adolf Hitler. So much of the city was much more cosmopolitan. And Heidi and Keita and her friends, they were artists and singers and just leaning a lot more cosmopolitan.
Right.
So they were talking and they knew more. Now, going back though to one reason why Keita made the decision, one thing that she learned was that she was recruited with the opportunity of a lifetime
Mhm.
to get out of the sticks and go to the big city on a scholarship at the State Opera. I mean,
Yeah.
That's
talk about an
big.
opportunity. Big, life changing. And around the time that her eyes were kind of being opened, she learned that her position was made available because they kicked all the Jewish singers out. She was only there because other people lost their place. So did that hit home? I don't know. We don't know all the reasons. Don't we wish we could ask Keita all the
Well, and
questions?
that's my next question. It leads into is that because I think we can all rationalize something. She's a single mom. I've got to take care of my kid. You think, would I have made that same decision? And I can't answer that honestly. But one of the things about the book is that you really, as Mitch mentioned, you capture Heidi's story
Mhm.
through Heidi's eyes. And we don't really get into the minds of anyone else. We get the footnotes for historical context, which is really important. But, we just don't know what's in Keita's mind. We know she was fiercely protective of Heidi, but we also know she made some choices that put herself and Heidi at great risk, one of which led to Heidi being left alone, in the final days of the war. So, did Heidi ever get a chance as an adult to kind of unpack some of this with her mother?
She somewhat. A lot of what we know is because Heidi was an only child. She was mature for her age. She was always listening.
Mhm.
So she heard bits and pieces and remembered. But later, yes, she did get to hear conversations between Keita and her friends or to talk with Keita somewhat, but not everything. there were things that Heidi would never know, that she never recalled being talked about, because the traumas for Keita's generation were so deep. To a large extent, the German people just did not talk about it.
So, as you speak of the trauma, the war took so much from so many, and obviously we get a front row seat to exactly what it took, from Heidi as a young child. Can you talk to us a little bit about what it continued to take from her in her life going forward?
I mean, first, let's think about Keita.
Mhm.
She's a young woman in her 20s with the world at her feet, all the opportunity, and it cost Keita her dreams
Mhm.
forever. But it's never the same.
Right.
You can't go back, and her country was in ruins. And for Heidi, though, she just was, I don't know if she was born with natural resilience, blessed with Keita, with that sort of confidence and love and sense of self-worth. Because, I mean, Keita would say, Heidi was just born laughing, born smiling with dimples. And she largely got through life by being bright and lovable and forward looking. And so she fell in love with America. She never felt, after going through the war, that Germany was home to her.
Mhm.
And so after the war, they were in Stuttgart in the American sector. And as she comes of age, the GIs are around, handsome, and she just was in love with all things America. So she had the opportunity to come here and live really a love affair with this country.
That's amazing. So, you mentioned again, she was able to come here. What became of her family? Her extended family plays a pretty big role in the book. So, what became of them after the war?
So many of them were caught, behind the Iron Curtain.
Mhm.
Her beloved Oma and Opa in the village. I mean, in the early parts, we just see the love that these
Right.
grandparents have for Heidi. And after the war, she never made it back. Heidi never got to see her Oma and Opa again. Ultimately, they were in the communist sector, which is another dramatic part of the story. They had
Mhm.
to escape communism just in time with the clothes on their backs. Would you do that? As a single
Right.
mother, would you risk the risks that Keita took,
They're
the
incredible.
courage, incredible, and also a little questionable, right? Like
Right,
you
that's
think
why I was asking that.
I'm a
Like, I wanna
mother.
ask her, like, let me into your mind. I wanna know what you were thinking because, I mean, she was bold, for sure.
She was bold. And I mean, one of the questions, we're doing a little rabbit trail here, but one of the questions that I just really had to think about was, she had to make the choice not to stay in the countryside, which would have been much safer
Mhm.
than being in Berlin. So why didn't she go back to the village and be with her people? And why did she stay in Berlin? And we learn later there were things, deep responsibilities that she felt to others in Berlin, but also, like, it could have cost all of them their lives. Something we realized later was that I think Keita thought the Americans were coming.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think Keita always expected that the farther west she could get, the likelihood is the Americans would come in, take Berlin, and I don't think she really counted on it falling to the communists.
And I thought that you captured that very well in the book, that there was kind of this race towards Berlin. Who was going to get there first, the Allies or the
They
Russians?
call them the Amis,
And
right?
yeah. And so
The
obviously
Amis and the Ruskies, they
yeah,
call
Amis and
them.
the
yeah.
Ruskies.
And there's that moment though when the Russians do arrive, and there's that professional soldier who tells Kata that it was, and actually exhibited kindness to her and Heidi, that said, you need to be on guard because there's another wave of soldiers coming that are not going to be kind. And I thought that, I mean, you, I just couldn't, it was hard to get in their minds because you feel finally you're liberated from what was going on in Berlin. But then right after that liberation, you're facing, another threat. And it was just, I mean,
Ugh.
God, it just had to be exhausting for them.
They were so bereft by the end. I mean, they knew, I mean, they were over Hitler, they
Hmm.
all were like, there were a few holdouts, but people were so disgusted with that by the end. But Berliners had a very dark kind of sense of humor. And one of the if you can call it a joke, it's not, was, "Oh, well, I hope you enjoyed the war because the peace is going to be terrible,"
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
they were waiting for the Russians to come in, because the Russians, Germany had done so many atrocities to those Russian soldiers and their families, and the years that they had spent fighting against Germany. They wanted revenge. And they were the horde of non-professional soldiers that followed
Right.
were looking for revenge. And who was left? It was a city of women and children, totally undefended.
Yeah. The last question I have for you, Rhonda, is that one of the things I think you captured poignantly was Heidi's innocence as it evolved throughout her story. That there's the moment when she moves to Berlin and she's got the cat, and there's the window and she's up in the window waving at people as they go by. I mean, just the sense of wonderment of a child was still present in her life. But then the story progresses and she gets a little bit older, and then she's left alone during that one bombing. And when you capture the moment where she wakes up and there's rubble in her face and she looks for water to cleanse her eyes and her face, I have to admit, I listened to this book, and when you got to that point, I was weeping like a child because I just was there and I felt so compelled and moved by that moment. What, in telling this story, did you find yourself admiring about Heidi and Kata?
I could go on and on about Keita, just her courage, her moxie, her sense of her own moral compass. You just did not mess with that woman. When she had an idea of what was right, there was no stopping her.
And
She was resourceful. She was clever.
and again, we think, when we read these things and we think about them in black and white, we think that she's older. She's in her 20s making these
Right.
decisions.
She's a young woman on
Yeah.
her own in this city. And I mean, talk about a heroine of
Mhm.
a story. Keita has all the right stuff. I mean, she's stunning, she's beautiful, she's clever, she's complicated.
Mhm.
Um, and then Heidi, there's a moment for me in Heidi's story that, and it's right before. So we'll set the stage a little bit. She finds herself alone. We won't spoil why she's alone. She's alone in this apartment. Well, I will say the moment she's not alone at first. She's
Right.
left in the care of neighbors, and they were supposed to. And Heidi had spent her childhood having other people watch after her, and they were too busy surviving and all the things. And very often they didn't care for her. And Heidi gradually learns in life that the only one that's going to take care of Heidi is Heidi.
Mhm.
I mean, her mother aside, her mother was there and a fierce protector, but the mothers were always busy trying to stand in line for a potato, or the children were basically feral
Yeah.
in the city, right? And they just learned to go scavenge for food. I mean, the resourcefulness of these kids. But there's a moment she's in the care of these other adults, and Heidi sees them doing something that she doesn't agree with, and she kicks them out of the apartment. These two grown women, a mother and a grandmother and their children, Heidi packs their bags, literally puts it on the front step, locks the door, and says, "Thank you. I will take care of myself
I
from now on."
love
She's
that moment.
9.
Yeah. And the garnish she leaves on top of their pile of stuff is like next level chef's kiss. So yes, it was an amazing
Yeah,
moment. Yes, I was
it's an
cheering for her.
amazing moment. But then, so that's her triumph, right? Heidi's going to
Right.
take care of Heidi. She's going to protect the apartment for when her mother returns. She believes her mother will return, although we don't know that. And then there's a bombing that happens one night in about March of 1945, just weeks before Berlin falls. She can't get to the bomb shelter in time, and it hits so hard and so fast it blows out the window of her apartment, the glass, and she stands there and watches her neighbor's home burn right in front of her eyes. She said it was like it blew the facade off, like you're looking into a dollhouse.
Mm.
this home where this couple had been kind to her. And she watched the flames lick the grandfather clock. And she just stood there and just sobbed, her little body crying as she watched the city burn.
I mean, you talk about resilience and survival, but at that point, what other choice do you have but to survive? But the fact that she has even been able to thrive in life in any way is such a testament to her spirit, to her mother, to so many things. I mean, she's
It is.
incredible.
I have to tell you also, the entire time I was working on with Heidi on this book, I had a daughter the age of Heidi
Ugh.
during the book.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm looking at my 9-year-old thinking, okay, wow. But it changed a little bit about the way I parent.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Because I thought, you are capable of
Mhm.
so much.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
I'm, we're coddling, and no one wants their child to experience trauma, but it just shows the resilience and the capabilities of children.
Yeah.
So tell us what Heidi's up to now.
She is stunning. I mean, she's 90 years old. She is still tall and beautiful. She is full of light, and she has a great sense of humor. She is quick-witted. We talk politics. She's very concerned when she looks at things happening in the world and in our country. And I have to tell you, though, she had kind of quietly just become independent. And I don't know, I think a lot of the community maybe forgot she was there, because she's just so independent.
Yeah.
And she told me one day, she said, I kind of thought maybe when I had a funeral, we didn't need to have one because I've outlived everybody. But then we had her book party at the launch, and the entire town came.
Wow.
I mean, it was standing room only. And after she called me after that and said, I guess we can have a funeral. She has new friends now. Like, all these people now are wanting to be around her, and they're taking her to the opera, and she's making friends that are 30 years younger. And so she's like got this second life.
Wow.
I love this so much.
Yeah.
Rhonda, congratulations on the book. It is amazing. A Child in Berlin is just really brilliant. And we want to encourage everybody after this pod, go order it because you will not be disappointed. It is an incredible story. And so you are welcome back anytime. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you. What a delight. You two are doing important work. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, Rhonda, before we let you go, though, we've got one last question that we ask all of our guests, and Missy has the honor of asking it.
So, Rhonda, as you know, our tagline at Good Faith Media is "There's more to tell." So, in light of your work and our conversation today, what is your more to tell?
That is, in my work, I've learned that everyone has a story. And we might think that, okay, my story isn't as dramatic as growing up in Berlin during World War II. But every person I've ever interviewed or talked to has something that they have learned that it's, I think, our responsibility to make sure that the wisdom of our generation gets passed on. And the freaky magic thing about it is it changes the person who tells the story. So when you tell your story, it changes your own ending. It has a freaky effect. And it was like I'm saying with Heidi, telling her story changed the ending of her story. It made new friends. It opened up this whole second life.
Oh, I love that.
Love that. Thank you so much. I look forward to the next story you're going to tell us.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Well, thank you.
Rhonda, thank you so much again. It has been a delight visiting with you.
Likewise.
And to our audience, we want to thank you for joining us this week. Missy and I will be back next week. And until then, keep living good faith. You've been listening to Good Faith Weekly, hosted by Mitch and Missy Randall. This weekly podcast from Good Faith Media discusses matters of faith and culture.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcast and give us a like and a glowing review. We produce the podcast out of Norman, Oklahoma. Our music comes from Pond 5.
And we're supported by listeners like you. Learn more about us at goodfaithmedia.org.